2023, and we're just coming off the 4th of July. Grateful for those that attended last week. We're focused on a town hall and ripple effect. So there's going to be some general, we'll go through it real quick here, just a general update as to progress this last week, any kind of tools, technologies, directions, and maybe even a poll today. And then just general questions that anyone may have, thoughts, comments, feedback, maybe on the latest that's happening in the world. For those that are joining us, let me jump in here and see. I haven't even looked at all the people that are with us. So it looks like we've got everybody. So Terrence, L, Wally, thank you for joining and helping to moderate. If people have questions that you don't want to verbally request or say, you're welcome to push that into those moderators and they'll go ahead and pop those questions in. Or you're welcome to go ahead and ask them live. We'll be going live with the questions in just about 15 minutes or so. This is a private membership association. As a reminder, it's for members only. Some of the things we'll talk about may be forward-looking comments or questions or statements. We basically will be going over the combination of a phone connected to storage. And the model looks something similar to this, but the phone actually uses derived keys, which is key management, really the future of what we call decentralization. So we look forward to explaining a lot of that and what that really means. What I'd like to do is build, before we go anywhere, I'm actually, for those that have not seen how this actually works, I'm going to kind of break script and pull over a screen that'll go everywhere. So because it's showing everybody. So you can see there's lots of different meetings. So you've got a bunch of them. But what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to create a poll. So the question is going to be, so if you notice, it's in the chat system next to the poll. So we're going to ask, would you purchase a what is the
node?
No, it's another word for non-cancelable. I know this. It's an R or a P that it starts with. Dang it. It's basically like a perpetual, or it doesn't need to be renewed. What I'll do is I won't even go there. Okay, so I basically just created a poll. So we'll go ahead and let everybody answer that. I'm going to push it out to the others as well real fast. So go ahead and just answer that. So the question is, if there was a new type of license plate that goes on vehicles, and it's not just an automobile or a motorcycle or a boat, but vehicles that are registered not just in a particular province or a county or a state, but the whole earth. So would you actually purchase one time? So imagine you go through, you use for those of you that know how to use the digital world, it basically, let's see if I can do this real fast. It basically allows you to log into the digital world and you can create a business, and that business can create assets. Those assets can actually have a derived key that can be tied to things just like this. So literally imagine that this QR code here, or it would also look like something like this. So you could have a QR code here that would then actually be an encryption key, and the last 6 digits of that would actually be your license plate. So imagine, instead of going to your city or your state or your province, depending on what part of the world you're in, you could actually get a license that is tied to the whole globe. So the jurisdiction is the whole earth and tied to different regions. So this particular one is Tuvalu. There'll be other regions that are coming online, but the thought process is, or the question is this something that you would actually desire? For instance, there has been legislation that has just passed in the United States of America in the state of Wyoming to do something very similar. They're not tying it to blockchain-based systems, but they're tying it to a basically a license plate that automatically does not need any renewals. So every year you don't have to go and re-register or get your updated stickers. So it's a license plate that does not expire. If you sell the vehicle, it expires, and basically the next party has to go through that asset tracking process if they so choose in this ecosystem. But again, the question is, let's see if we've got any kind of responses. It went through 3 different queues. So there's 3 answers to this: yes, no, and maybe. Maybe is like, hey, I just need more information. I really wouldn't be comfortable making a decision until I had more info. No would be not interested. I like, just renewing every year, being in the jurisdiction that I'm in. And let me give you an example. Let's say some of you are very well aware of digital ID. And the digital ID will actually be on your phone. So it will basically take over. You won't use a license anymore. It will become a digital. So some of the concerns are, if I get pulled over for whatever reason, for those that are aware, this is not about not following the law. This is not about not getting in trouble. This is not about hiding from things. What this is about is privacy. So there's a lot of case law and examples around individuals being able to be free and operate a vehicle. In the United States of America, the Supreme Court actually came out and defined the difference between traveling and driving like as a service. And with driving and transporting people in a professional way where you're actually making money, there's actually a process that you have to follow. And the licensing process, certain governance and disclosures, all of it it all ties to the same thing, as well as insurance. But when you're an individual that's a private citizen and you have the ability to transport from one location to another, those same laws don't apply. And that's a federal standpoint. That's not just from a standpoint of each state per se. Now, that's not saying that states can't make their own decisions. I believe that the forefathers of the United States of America absolutely knew and understood what they were doing when they decentralized the authority, not just from the federal government, but to the states, the United States of America. That's why it's called United States. But then they also went a step further to go to the counties as well. But a license plate is not issued. Now, they do have jurisdictions around, do you need safety? Do you need emissions? Do you need these different things? Those go county by county, at least in the United States of America. I don't know how it works in Canada or Australia or New Zealand. Or actually, I do know how it works in New Zealand. It's the whole country, one database, and they basically have little waypoints in different cities where you drive in, you actually get your personal license as well as the vehicle license at the same time, and they do the safety and emissions. They literally, you can even stay in your car and do it. So it's a very different approach to what you see in North America. But the question is, would you actually purchase? I'm not going to go through price. I'm not going to go through all those different types of things. But would you purchase a plate, whether it was for your boat, your motorcycle, your car? Would this be something that you would actually do? So let's go ahead and wrap up the polls. And again, there's no right or wrong reason. This is very early. So we'll go ahead and we'll tally at least what one of the rooms is saying, and then we'll just discuss it in general. So right now, if you haven't, we're still seeing votes kind of come in. So go ahead, and if you want to make a final vote, go for it. I'm still seeing numbers moving around. Okay, so this may be completed, may not. So we're seeing 63% would say yes, 13% would say no, 25% would say maybe. So maybe they need more information, etc. There's a lot to be understood and realized with this. So this is actually going to 22% maybe, 11% no, and 67% yes. So, but there's no right or wrong reason. We're just trying to understand what the perception of the audiences are. And I know this isn't all the audiences, at least those on social media platforms. You're welcome to put comments in. Those comments, I don't know that we'll be able to see them in this ecosystem, but yeah, we can. We can. Let's see here. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. So 67% said yes. That's a good data point. So that's basically one of the big things that we've been focused on and working through this last week. In addition to, for those that are aware, some of the things that are currently entering into the beta phase within different ecosystems around identity, driver's licenses, types of services. This was some of the registration stuff that we talked about. You'll also see that certain things have changed. So you see new movies that are going live. You're seeing new content that you may have not seen before, especially as you kind of scroll down the page, and then just different updates, so to speak. So please, here's 4 new videos. We went through 2 of them 2 weeks ago, but there is some more additional videos if you want to take the time to kind of understand that. And that's also, you've got that basically here and also at the digital world. So it's digitalworld.earth, where you can see some of those. So based upon what we just talked about, I'll stop talking and see if anybody's got feedback, thoughts, or questions, or we'll just go to some of the questions that may have already been asked and go from there. Thoughts, feedback?
Hey, Michael, it's Beck from Australia. How are you?
Life is good. How are you?
I'm great. I just wanted to touch base on some events that have happened in the last couple of weeks in Australia. And I read your article from 2016 about the penguin jumping over the chasm.
That was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I saw that you wrote on there about pictures for this technology. So I took that and I pitched on a hyperledger.
Wow.
Yeah. And no one really knew what it was or what was going on. So it was really a good time to educate people. And because the technology just slipped through the back door and no one really knew what to do with it. So I picked it up and I ran with it. And so, so we've got a hyperledger now running through, I guess, the largest essential telecommunications company now. And so it was a great time that Microsoft was there, Telstra was there. It was a really good time to educate people.
Was this a
on
presentation?
Claire as well?
That's awesome. So
yeah,
actually, there's a Microsoft relationship. I don't know if you saw this here, but back in the day, Microsoft actually took ClearOS Server and made it run on all of their servers. That was a different animal.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because before that, we've literally for a decade, we fought to try and take over Microsoft in a lot of the different server network gateway areas. And in 2015, we were literally able to do that. And you can kind of see when Linux actually took over Windows, that was a big advancement.
Yeah.
2015. I'm trying to find the article that you're talking about. It's a really good article. That was
so I'm pretty sure it's Microsoft that have swapped to their ledger, and we're actually using their verified IDs inside of the business.
You're talking inside of Telstra?
No, inside of no, I don't work for Telstra. I work for another telecommunications company.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was a great time to talk to everyone because there was all people from around telecommunications companies, about IDs, and I showed everyone the Claire phone. They thought it was great. They were like, wow, that's a huge change. But yeah, it was a great night overall.
Yeah, that's one. So you did a presentation on this article, huh? Or at least pieces of it?
Yeah, so I pitched just some innovation for telecommunications just to improve overall operation resiliency on the network, just inside of our operations because it's so split. So more like supply chains, procurement, but I also spoke about the future of this technology because no one was really educated in it.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I think I surprised a lot of people.
There is a big awareness that's still happening, even though like this prediction here, this was the last month of the year in 2015. So we're talking about the next year, and no, it's 2016. And you can kind of see where we thought there would be an adoption curve. So for those that are not aware of an adoption curve, you basically have innovation, early adopters, you know, majority, early majority, and then late majority. And on every industry, this basically happens. Some of them it may be 100-year cycle, some of them even longer, some of them shorter. Most of them average out to about 7 years on the short term, because different businesses and innovation basically, or business models or things obfuscate and start over. So basically, if we fast forward here, we're over in this area, and I would say it's actually taken a lot longer to get the adoption. I would still say we're sitting, well, if you actually worked for some of the financial systems in the United States of America, you would say that the Fed Now and Ready Now systems are basically going live within 10 days. And so you could argue that, you know, the world is going to actually adopt a brand new replacement system for the wire and SWIFT systems that have all been deployed throughout the world. And that's the whole United States of America, is not just running a pilot. This is a massive shift that's happening right under our nose. And so but that's not fair to combine it to this chart, primarily because America is not the world. It's 330 million people compared to, you know, China that's got 1.2 billion, no, 1.8 billion. India's got 1.2 billion. I mean, the contrast is just not even close. I personally believe that India will have an integrated system before any countries in the world. The problem is it's going to be all centralized, but it'll be fully digital. So there's a difference between digital and decentralized. So the goal is to have decentralized digital systems, not centralized digital systems. And for those that may be a new concept too, here's a slide that goes through, well, let me pull up on a different deck here. Here's a slide that kind of walks through that. So Microsoft's a really good example of this. Inside the Microsoft, whether it's a small business server or Active Directory systems, they all use a directory hierarchy where a tree or a forest is in the center of it, and then you have other systems that are basically subservient. The goal is to have architectures and systems that don't always rely on one another, but they can basically confirm a transaction or an event. And really, blockchain initially started with just events, not transactions. Bitcoin was one of the first things that turned it into a transaction, but tracking events is actually just as important. And when we look at some of the advancements that we're talking about here, the topics here with these are really just looking at events. So for instance, this individual decentrally created a company that then created an asset. And it doesn't have to be a company. It could be a trust. It could be a community. It could be tons of different things. If you want, I could actually go through and show you the process. But once that organization is created, so the individual logs in, creates an organization. That organization can then create an asset. That asset has a QR code or an encryption key that then ties those assets to it. And that's where these different types of assets come into play. So the ability to say this home or this boat or this car belong to this ecosystem, and if certain things happen, let's say in a will, certain things are supposed to happen and go to different parts of the world, it can actually disseminate or be transferred in according from a decentralized process. So literally the governance and management of it can all be dynamically built in. A lot of folks are struggling to even say, well, what does that really mean? I know today if I pass away, what happens with my house or with a vehicle or whatever. And the real topic is in the future, as these systems, whether it's centralized or decentralized, as they go digital, this is going to be a very key and important topic for humanity, because it's all going to be a digital process that will actually govern how they're moving around. What we currently have in the legal systems and the estate planning systems and the taxation systems, it's all going to change. In some ways, there may be more energy and effort. In other ways, full industries are going to be just removed, like literally. So, but it's not something that we need to be scared about. I've seen a lot of people that say, hey, I'm worried about this progress because what's everybody going to do? What are the jobs going to be? How do they create livelihoods? And I would argue, for instance, this last week, You know, imagine this business right here. So what if this type of a license and a process was actually open sourced and done so that people can actually use 3D printers to print on a unique type of metal printer that actually pops out different textures and structure and can even create QR codes, and literally imagine something where a blueprint can actually be now printed anywhere people create these printers, and the printers are $400 or $500. That could be jobs for folks, and some people are saying no, you don't want to do that. You want to have the quality, you want to have it centralized. But the point that I'm trying to drive at is, as a new ecosystem comes up that's digital, responsibility to make sure that it's not always centrally governed. Now, it's a fine line between, and I'll pull open this slide here, it's a fine line between finding the balance between governance and freedom, or centralization and decentralization. So that's really where the digital world is helping to bridge and stitch those use cases together on how people can actually use and adopt technology. I'll go ahead and pause there, but your comment around Microsoft and this chasm is just, in many ways it's spot on, but we'll have to see kind of where we go in the future. This goes out to 2031 and beyond, so we'll see where it ends up. For those of you that actually want to see, well, one of the things that was neat about this was Microsoft actually admitted that what they had said prior. For instance, I moved a family and an ecosystem from the United States of America to New Zealand in 2011. And this was about the same time that Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of Microsoft at that time, said, Linux is a cancer. To have people develop and then let everybody else share it, and everybody else can keep taking and creating and building, and it's a cancer. It's going to kill the software industry. Well, fast forward, sure enough, Microsoft actually said they won. Linux and open source won. So that's a really big topic that we were building on this ecosystem way back in those days. So thank you for bringing that up. It's kind of nice to go back in time and review.
Yeah, no worries.
It
was a good night. It was a good night to, bring it to people's attention and talk about, emerging technologies, because I don't think many people understand, because this technology just gets like slipped through the back door. It was only by chance that someone told me about it, because I was having a conversation with somebody in the office.
How many people were at this event you're talking about?
There was about 100.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for opening your mouth and driving awareness.
Yeah.
Good for you.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for your article, because I had it on my to-do list, when I eventually came across it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't write many of them, but the ones that I do write, it's not just some SEO blog post. There's some real depth to it, and so you can kind of go back.
Yeah, no, that was really helpful. Really helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the feedback. Thoughts, feedback, any other topics?
I've got something to say, Michael.
Go ahead.
I feel like I've caught the last 5 minutes of a 3-hour-long webinar. I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea what you're talking about or what's going on with this business. So it's a digital world, but I might have to catch some other webinars to catch up to speed of what's going on. I went to the website on my phone here and I was checking out. You've got digital everything. It's mind-blowing how many different things you have there. You're creating a parallel economy, right? In different nations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You got it. That's exactly right.
But that's all I can kind of figure out. I don't know the rest of it. If there's a business attached to this, or if there's no business attached, if it's like what it is.
Yeah. So the digital world is focused on decentralizing services for humanity. These are the services. So voting, reputation, identity, forensics, mortgage, you name it. There's lots of services, and some countries are selecting some of these services to go live. The digital world is really an ecosystem that is not a company or a business. It does have service providers. Some of the first service providers are clear companies. So as we kind of scroll down to the bottom, you can see a couple of them. So you can run into the different Clear companies. And one of the easiest ways to do it is just go to clear.co.com. And this goes through all the different Clear companies. Now, these are different companies that are focused on decentralization and different use cases that all tie to the digital world. So when we talk about the different companies, we're talking about a foundation that helps, like we talked about that Linux and that open source. That's exactly what they did here. And this was with a technology called ClearOS Server, which is a binary replacement for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And Hewlett-Packard Enterprise actually pre-installs that technology on all of its servers worldwide for Gen 9 and Gen 10 servers. Clear Center provides services for that operating system, and then it actually provides storage-based infrastructure for humanity. Over 150,000 deployments of it around the world, over a decade of work, and massive, massive tech and partnerships. There's also, within this ClearOS server technology, there's actually a marketplace that basically allows this back-end infrastructure to create a new ecosystem, kind of like this map popped out when we first started. It's really a model where the phone and the storage come together seamlessly for the user, cutting out Google and cutting out Apple and enabling the individual to actually own their own identity and their own data, if that makes any kind of sense. But the companies, for instance, the phone, Clear Cellular is an offering of the phone, is another company that helps to build the phone. And then you've got the storage, and that's how all of it kind of comes together. And then you've got Clear United, which is a marketing opportunity for folks. And then there's other ecosystems, for instance, some of the technology that we're actually streaming on, like Clear One and the infrastructure that's all designed and built from different technology. And a lot of it is open source based that people have dedicated their lives to. For instance, in this Clear software, this comes from technology from a guy named Jerry, wonderful man, spent almost a decade of his life and millions in reserves that he had made primarily out of the crypto world. And then literally just before he passed away, he just came and built it and gave it to us like on a platter and then passed away. This was about a year ago. Well, you see a lot of that kind of thing happening where we all as humanity can work together and intelligently organize technology so for the betterment of humanity. So if that makes any kind of sense. So it's really...
Okay, can I just say one last thing?
Go for it, bud.
Just want to know then, so you mentioned Clear United, that's something about marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds like an opportunity, I'm imagining. Where's the opportunity in digital, sorry for my maybe I'm saying it wrong, digital world?
Yeah, so
where's the opportunity here, and where's the opportunity with, sorry, it's gone now. It was United. It was digital, it was, Clear United and then digital world. Is there an opportunity on both sides or one side?
Absolutely. Or what? Yeah, it all stems together nicely. So Clear United provides an opportunity basically for people to tell directly people about what this is all about. So Clear United is kind of a broad scope approach for people telling people, primarily around decentralized phones. Let's see if I can find some images of those. I won't try and search for them here. What I'll do is these decentralized phones, I'm going to go to clear.store, are a replacement for the existing Google and Apple phones that are out there in the world. So instead of buying an iPhone, you go and buy, one of these phones, and you get the same user experience. The phones, it'll continue to leapfrog with hardware, memory, CPU, disk, drives, storage, batteries, screens, all improving. But ultimately, these are decentralized phones. So you actually get a phone that gives you an encryption key. There was actually a slide right over here that started talking about it. And this is the difference, and this is the opportunity, because the whole digital world runs off of this encryption key. So this key basically enables people to log into this digital world. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm just log in. I'm going to grab a phone, which is a Clear phone, and I'm actually streaming this meeting. I just literally had a meeting in the same building. So I'm going to open up Clear Life. Okay, it's going to use derived keys. And then I'm going to click on login. And then over here, I'm going to say login. So no usernames. What just happened? Let's do this in a different. Well, can we take a task to Shiv to get Clear Web tested?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, bud. That's tested. Actually, it'd probably be Vic Az to get it tested within the for the login system. So this is a login with no username and password. So I just literally logged in with just a scan from the phone. But what that enables is people talk about Web3 and other things, but you can actually log in and do tons of different things. So over here on the left is all my data that's decentralized in a way. And some of this is forthcoming. Some of it's already here, but like on this one, I can actually create a business or an association. We call them organizations. So it's really a combination of any of them. And you can come in and actually create it. Let's say we want to create a trust. We want to put a vehicle in it, or actually this would be creating the organization. You can literally create an organization, validate who it is. So this is, I don't know if you're familiar with what Wyoming's done with encryption, but if you actually, for instance, here, I could use that same system to verify who I am without even using my name. So what that means is I can create a trust or a company or whatever, and this encryption key is a derived key of my private master key. So what society is trying to do today is basically centralize decentralization. So the Lightning Network can be layered on top of Bitcoin, which now 5 countries run their currency systems on it. But what you're doing is you're centralizing what was intended to be a decentralized transaction. With Bitcoin, it's supposed to be anonymous. But with the layered Lightning Network over the top of it, it basically grabs data from the individual to allow them to do what's, they would argue that KYC, so know your customer, and any kind of money laundering laws have to know who the individuals are that are actually transmitting. So they'll grab a phone number, they'll grab a name, they'll grab a date of birth, or maybe an address. They'll grab 3 different triangulations, and then they'll layer that with a public key, in effect, in a Bitcoin public key, in effect, basically centralizing decentralization. In this ecosystem with derived keys, it doesn't happen that way. It's using intelligent key management that literally enables the future of blockchain or decentralized systems to actually function. So I don't know if that's making sense, but I've logged into a digital world. I'll go ahead and say that I want to create a Toyota Trust. And all you really need is a URL. That's how you activate in the digital world. You can actually purchase up to 430 URLs here. And
anonymously, right?
You can do it anonymously. Yeah. Yep, you can. Not all of them. Like if you get .us or .nz or .mx, those are countries, and they force you to actually do that up there. I'm going to grab. I'm just going to grab an image here real fast. It's a big image, but we'll see how it works. So I'm going to add this organization. So I literally just created a digital company. You can see here. And this is a trust for a car. I'm going to go ahead and add an asset now.
And then can you just talk me through, so why would you be doing this? Like, why would you be building this trust? What is it that your goal is, the end result here? At the end game
you're basically identifying. So imagine that this asset has a key that you can then link to everything. So for instance, the VIN number, the ownership, any kind of liens or what's the payment on it, or the registration side of it, or if I die and it gets passed on, all of these things, the ownership behind it can actually get passed on with it. So for instance, I'm going to grab a vehicle. I'm going to link it to a currency. I'm going to say there's a US dollar value to it. We could put the dollar value, let's say it's 22,000. I'm going to go ahead and scan this. So again, I'm able to create this, but I can actually prove who creates it. So it's really valuable in the future to validate these types of things, because once somebody actually passes on, so to speak, let's see if I can grab this. The ability to have those assets and actually push them over are very important. Proper family.
What if our friends at the WEF decide to shut down the internet for playing some games here? Is there a way to, do you have nodes, or is there a way to access your platform through, I don't know, Starlink or other, whatever that's called, the satellite, or what?
Yeah, so right now I'm accessing it just off of a clear phone off the cellular network. 2 meetings ago, I was in the middle of the ocean doing it off of a satellite Starlink uplink. The internet as itself has to run. And with, for instance, this first country we're doing this with, they're the least probable for success in the whole world. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about with that. So for instance, with these folks here basically said in this meeting here, said that out of every part of the world, you have basically different parts of currencies that are in use in the probability. And this looks at the population, it looks at banks, it looks, do they have currencies, have infrastructure, the weakest. Your use case and examples, for instance, their cellular services, data and voice, are all over satellite. There is no fiber cable to the country. There is no cable of any sort, not ISDN, DSL, nothing. There's zero. It's only satellite. So how do you actually run a government, and how do you run an ecosystem like that? And so that's basically what we're going through. I want to follow through with this use case here. I don't remember where I was. Oh, I was in a different browser, that's why. So basically here, I would add a VIN number. Is the right thing to do. That's not needed.
So Michael, if I may, is this something that the opportunity is selling to governments and nations would be like the ultimate opportunity then, I guess? Or,
No,
you know,
no,
what's the opportunity? How do you monetize this, and how does a person make money from this? Because it looks like the opportunities with these two different businesses models are like, it's unlimited by my first look.
You're spot on. Basically, all systems that we currently have are going to be recreated in a digital sense, but the goal is to be able to have them created in a decentralized sense. So when you talk about building a parallel ecosystem and economy, that's really what this is. And there's multiple different ways to get to market. Clear United is an opportunity for people on this call and anybody telling someone else about basically a product. So how can we talk about different products? How do you drive awareness? And instead of having an Apple that buys a Super Bowl ad, when we originally started, it was a $2 trillion company. Now it's coming up on a $4 trillion company, but they're not going to share 40% of their revenue and profit with it. But when we look at Clear United, it basically, the revenue model looks something like this, where you literally have the ability. Now, we had this last year, we had some real abuse, which we're almost all the way dug out of, to be honest with you. But it's basically operations, 10%, administration, 10%, product, 40%. And then you've got between 33% and 7% pool, another 40% for driving awareness. So out of that, let's just say it's 1 trillion market cap or value of that company, would they give away 40% of their revenues? And that's really what we're talking about with Clear United, is people telling people about decentralization. Instead of using Apple and Google-based products, they can basically use those. So hopefully that answered your question and makes sense to you, yeah?
It does, yeah, thank you.
So what I'm going to do here is I basically have created, for those that are following along, I've created an organization, okay, a trust, and then I've created an asset inside of that trust. And now I'm going to go ahead and link this asset. So you can see there's 220,000. So I'm actually going to light up Clear Pay, or it could be Tuvalu Pay or Fiji Pay or however. But I'm going to go ahead and come down and say, create a new organization account. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and scan this, put my fingerprint on it, because the fingerprint combines with those 12 words. It then has derived keys to basically enable this system to go. So it validated that, and now it's asking for me to actually pay. So I just basically paid in a digital asset. And now what it's going to do is it's going to take those digital assets, the 220,000, and it's going to drop that onto my phone as a digital asset. So you'll see here, it actually just completed it, and I can go in. Let's see what it starts with. TOY. So you can see that asset right here. So I literally, so someone on this same call could actually go and find that asset, and I could send one to them in real time just by scanning a camera. What we just showed you is literally, and here I'll even back up further. So so you can kind of see if the VIN number was here, this is who actually issued it. This is the encryption key for this. So if we issued a new license plate, the license plate number would actually be these last 6 digits here. So ZPAF9C. And then if we went back over to this organization, we actually looked at it. You can view a page. So this is public. So no one actually has to log in to see this, but you can see this proper family trust. You can see an encryption key to validate in the digital world that it has an identity. You can see that it's active. You can see that it's a trust. You can see the domain for it. And you can see down here that it actually has a Toyota sitting inside of it. And then also those different quantities. And you can see in time, these things will actually start showing who holds the value. So as a public register, excuse me, you can basically start seeing who actually holds the value inside of each one of these. So I hope this is, that real world example just showed you. So imagine if I said, okay, now I want to actually get a license plate for this vehicle. That's what we were just talking about when we were talking about the question and the polling here of is this viable or not. And it's actually dropped down to 60% yes, 10% no, and 30% maybe. So yeah, I don't know if people really understand the depth of what that was. So literally imagine if in a public way, people could actually come in. Because right now, when you're driving by down a street, you don't realize this, but there's cameras that are tracking vehicles, and those vehicles are linked to individuals. And there is actually machine learning and artificial intelligence that's doing some crazy stuff with that. But if you obfuscate the linkage, so for instance, if you take off the license plate on the back of the vehicle and you put on a different license plate that actually can still tie to those same records, but it doesn't tie to the individual's name. If you notice, there's nowhere in here where I as an individual actually have my name, but I can cryptographically prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, which is even going to be bigger than what the current systems are doing with centralized ID. So this is putting ID back into the individual's hand with their own ability to basically remember the encryption key, this digital identity. So that's what the numbers and letters would be on the actual car. So, or maybe it's a boat or whatever else. So I hope this example, made good trust to you, or made sense to you, so to speak. So
there's your there's your license plate then, in essence, right? The QR code, essentially, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. That.
And so how do you monetize this? Like, for example, this particular thing or another one of the many endless scrolls, different categories you have, is it monetized through inviting other people into this and then they do this on their own one by one, or is there a bigger picture on this?
Yeah.
As opposed to like just inviting a person or two and bringing in some people that way.
Yeah. So the goal would be, by the way, Wally, can you take another task to remind me and Shiv to show the provider, the partners? There's an area on here. So the answer to your question, which is a really good question, is the ability for third parties to come in and say, I want to provide a service within this digital ecosystem. Maybe I want to be a notary. Maybe I want to provide domains, or maybe I want to manage assets, or maybe I want to we're working with countries right now that are actually authorizing certain banks to issue mortgages that are paid back in digital assets, which is really how money and funds are created. A majority of them are funds in the majority of the world, at least the leading elements of the world. They have mortgage type systems and loaning type systems that is actually where the debt starts. So they're creating money from debt, so to speak. So, but to be specifically directly answering your question, you could come in, go through an authorization process and actually say, I'm a notary in wherever I live, or I could even do it online, which means I get your own stamp. So you get the ability to have your own encryption key. So you can actually turn in. So notice like this would be William, and then that encryption key is that individual. And let's say that he's doing dispute management or dispute resolution, or, let's say for instance, today, if someone wants to sell a vehicle, let's say from California to Utah, and you want to get a registration in Utah, what you do is you actually take it, believe it or not, you take this vehicle and the title to a police station. And the police basically act as your notary, verifying the VIN numbers. That could be done all digitally and online. So imagine someone comes and says, hey, here's my ID, here's my face, I'm saying words, I'm blinking eyes, there's no deep fake going on. And so literally I will show you, and they can scan the bill of sale or the title, and then you actually show on a camera, and they take screenshots and whatever else. But what we're talking about is people coming together in systems like these, where you have multiple different parties that are providing services for one another. So you have two parties in, or one party in, and someone that's a third party validating who they are. You'll see most notary services go online. So if you haven't bought a home recently, like these things are actually all closing online, not in person. You can thank COVID for starting that type of an opportunity. But that's a good example of a service that could actually be done. Another thing is, like in the legal world, people that are providing, mediation type services, and they may be doing it over Zoom. This is a perfect environment to actually fire up similar type services where there may be something that is actually being done, but it's all done virtually. So you could start an arbitration process. And that's another thing is you can actually go through, and I think I'm already logged in here. So I could actually start a dispute, and literally you can have it public, you can have it private, you can disclose who you are, you can disclose who they are. It's just a process. So really, you hit it on the head earlier that it's a parallel system to the existing system using decentralized technologies. That's what it is. And
well, I love the product. I mean, you've got that Armor phone. I saw that earlier today. I would be a buyer of that Armor phone, and when they come back in, if you've got around a 7-inch screen, that'd be perfect for me. I think what you've got is all these different business models. It gives a person a bunch of choices in different opportunities, different verticals. And I was kind of curious as to what maybe the most, like say the 2 or 3 top most popular categories would be, potentially the hottest right now or for the next few years. And then on top of that, I was kind of curious about the digital passport, but I'm just kind of wondering if you guys have the training behind it so that a person comes in, they can become a provider. I think that was the term you used, service provider.
Yep.
And then you can actually run with this and build a business. And I'm kind of curious as to the digital passport, but also what the top 3 hottest markets might be now and moving forward. That's kind of all I've got to ask, because I've asked a bunch of questions and I don't know how long you're going to go. So
and Wally actually found that it just wasn't in the header. So your first question is a very good one. How can companies come in? Kind of like these companies, these are different providers that do different things that plug in or enable that digital world, so to speak, in some form or another. For instance, there's a lot of code that's come from Ripple, gone to Stellar, gone to the digital world. And that financial system that's replacing the SWIFT system that I was telling you about in about 10 days, it's all built on this same type of technology, the exact technology. But we'll be able to interface with that within this ecosystem. So these are some of the partners that are currently in, and they're providing some form of service one way or another. The clear companies are just kind of anchor partners that help get it going, but there'll be a lot of others that will literally start adding value and start coming on board. To answer your question around training, still very infant and have a lot of work that needs to be done there. If you know people that want to come in and learn and get involved, please, we need help there. Training is always something that is important and valuable. So as far as the top services go, I would say that a lot of this stuff is still very unique and starting here as far as when we look at some of the actual offering and products here. The 420 was basically the mainstream product that really took off. I personally love the 620. Some of the new pre-release products, I can't give you data on which one because they're still in a phase of being released. But I personally think that this will be a mainstream product here. When we look at some of the other services, this is something that's exciting, but we're not getting the right amount of activity. I think a lot of it is, and somebody said this to me today and let's see, was it earlier today? Yeah, I had the call was earlier today. This is the best kept secret that I've never heard about. And on one hand, it's like, oh, that's good. On the other hand, it's terrible. And so we've really entrusted a lot of folks to just go and drive we focused on innovation, we focused on technology, we focused on an adoption model that we believe is an eternal model. That's, decentralization, we believe is a principle that it's inside of everything, whether it's, through a microscope into our bodies and DNA, or all the way up into the universe and how galaxies work. Decentralization and really how intelligence is organized and how it operates. That's all we're doing is we're intelligently organizing the technology that humanity currently has to be able to use identity in a way that frees the individual. So a lot of people would say, well, we don't really care about that, or we don't do anything wrong, so we don't worry about data and who takes this and who does that. But I promise you that exactly what we've talked about today, when the financial system shifts and what you think is a dollar in your wallet or in your bank account goes digital, and it can actually be removed. It can actually be limited. And if you don't believe me, just go read some of the bills that were passed. Mr. Joe, basically in February, March of not this year, but the prior year, already approved programmable money. And so the things that I'm talking about, if someone doesn't do a certain thing and conform, maybe they can't travel and use funds. Or when they're at home, maybe they can only buy certain types of products and they can't buy other types of products. So you'll see an element of control that can be thrown into humanity around centralization, which is not good for future generations. Is it going to be massively crazy for our generation? Maybe it'll impact us 20% of the way. But when we go and fast forward 3, 4, 5 generations from now, I believe in humanity right now, in the dispensation that we get the opportunity to live in. This centralized versus decentralized, as things shift over to technology, is imperative. It just massively imperative that we decentralize, or at least provide that parallel system so that people can choose an alternative way. So I hope that answered your question and made some sense. If it didn't, please let us know.
100%. And I'm red-pilled. I'm awake, and I agree with everything you're saying. It's the CBDCs. If you've been to the AtlantaCouncil.org and look at that, the rollout of the CBDCs across the globe and what stage they're in, that's something that's a bit scary. You're saying within 10 days or 10 days from now, roughly, that's when the Fed now is getting rolled out.
Yeah. And it's rolling out on the same types of technologies that we're talking about the digital world being built on. What's is nice is that same wallet, it can actually house the same technology. So we can use the same technologies that I just showed you all these use cases on. We'll be able to use it with the FedNow systems from a technological standpoint. Now, the government may come out and say, you can only do it in this way and this, but the reality is it will be interoperable. So literally, and if I pulled up, here, I'll just do it real fast and try and get my camera to show you. So if I pull up contacts. And notice this derived key here. And if I just create a new account, you'll notice that it has right at the beginning, it says these wallets. Notice how Ripple's already plugged in. Stellar's already plugged in. So Bitcoin, it's already, you can hold these assets inside of the same phone as Decentralized, and it uses derived keys for different wallets to basically manage those assets. So the user never even needs to know a lot of their public-private key pair. All they had to do is basically use an encryption key out of the gate that made it simple for them. So very important, very, very important. And I think, to be honest with you, I think it's just getting started. But in all reality, we've come a long ways. Not a lot of people have been focused on decentralization for well over a decade. And that's really what the digital world stands on, is hundreds of thousands of developers and millions of lines of code and amazing open source technologies, primarily 3 different technologies. We forked Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is called ClearOS Server. We forked Android, which is called ClearOS Mobile. And we forked Ripple, which is the digital world's infrastructure that this all runs on. So if you come into this exchange infrastructure and you start looking through, how to build transactions, how to sign transactions, this technology will actually can interface with these other systems. So I'll stop blabbing and allow time for anyone that may have another question.
I just want to say thanks, Michael. I'm done, but I want to say this is a very exciting opportunity in business, and I might not look like I'm excited, but I'm very excited about it. And I really love what you're talking about and what you guys have done. So thanks again.
That's awesome. Thanks for your feedback, your belief, and for showing up. And for whoever invited you, I think that was Daniela. Thank you for bringing brilliant minds. It's exactly that's a perfect example of how people telling people, and hopefully there's a snowball effect over time that it actually drives an awareness that is a grassroots awareness. So thank you for being here. Other questions? I've got one. Looks like the ratio's changed up to yes, 67%, no, 8%, maybe 25%. We've got a question here. What's the difference between a Freedom Phone and a Clear Phone? The Freedom Phone was actually built on the same framework as, see if I can pull this up, as the 220. So this Clear Phone 220, we basically had someone who loved the model, loved the market, took it out, really did a good job of marketing it, but didn't have a product to actually sell. I'll just fast forward because it's a very painful part of existence. But basically, we built the Freedom Phone 222 off of that infrastructure there. And so it actually is a Clear Phone, but the image only works with Google, which is what the Freedom Phone does. All the Clear Phones can do Google or non-Google, so you can buy both versions. But the Freedom Phone infrastructure is basically the same. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah. Other questions or thoughts?
Danny?
Go ahead. Yeah, whoever looks like Phoenix, you just raised your hand. You're more than welcome.
You just don't need to unmute your mic, Phoenix.
Yeah, just unmute whoever raised their hand.
Michael, can I ask in the meantime,
Yeah.
is it best, because I hold quite a lot of Ripple XRP, and would it be better for me to keep that on my cold wallet on my ledger, or would it be better to put it on the Clear Pay on the phone? What's the benefits and negatives so that I can understand?
Today, keep it where it is, but know there is a vulnerability that's hit some of the Ledger devices, so you may want to look into that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't affect you, then just keep it where it's at. There's going to be a time, and we alluded to this about, well, it was almost a year ago, where if you notice with the phone, there's usually, and I don't know if everybody does this, but when you break apart the cases, right, you usually have some other type of card, and this card interfaces with the existing financial systems that are out there. But imagine if this card, and together with the phone using NFC technology or near field communication, enabled a cold storage wallet. Let's say that it was Bitcoin that you wanted to hold on your phone. And you don't want to just walk around, some people have massive amounts of value in it. You don't want to just walk around and so all they have to do is jack your fingerprint and do a transaction. But if these two things are separated, then the cold wallet basically doesn't work. So if you notice inside of ClearPay, there's two different types of transactions or elements. One that's a checking and one that's a savings. The savings are things like Bitcoin and others that are slow. So average a 10-minute transfer. Some of it, like Ethereum, can come down to two minutes, or even some of them faster, depending on the gas that you're paying and the network congestion. But when you combine it, you can transact. When you separate it, you can't. And so the goal is to build ID as well as a financial instrument, so it can actually link to the current rails, whether that's MasterCard or Visa or others. But then you can basically use it as not just an ID and financial instrument, but you can also do things such as unlocking cold wallet storage, and the phone is cold wallet storage. When that's live, I would definitely say move over. Then the next question is, have the Ripple wallets been cross-chain tested? Can you go Ripple to Stellar to Clear to whatever else, and Digital World to Ripple? And, you want all those different trading pairs to actually be valid. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, and James, I want to publicly just apologize around cycles and times. So thank you for all that you've given us time, and you probably give us too much time, but thank you for that. And we look forward to just wrapping things up. You know how to communicate with me, so we'll continue pushing there.
Yeah, perfect. I look forward to chatting with you later or tomorrow or something.
That sounds great. Looks like we got a couple more hands up. James, thanks for your question. Phoenix, if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to unmute. I know that you had a hand up there for a while.
I'm just dealing with Phoenix in relation to a phone issue. I'd like Phoenix to go to clear.support and create a ticket. And,
say again, Terrence? You're kind of muffled there.
I'm dealing with Phoenix on a phone issue, mate.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's meeting unless someone else raised their hand. So go ahead. That was Daniela.
Yeah, Michael, have you ever heard of the technology called RADA?
I haven't.
Russ brought it to my attention. I'm going to send you a link. Have you heard of CloudCoin?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm going to send those to you.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Much love, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you next week, same time.